Welcome back, Sideline Cancer family. We are joined for another player preview series, and today we are joined by CJ Miles. CJ, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. How you?
I'm doing well. It's Friday. It's a holiday weekend. Got some time off. You came back from a vacation. How are you doing with that?
Doing good. Took the kids to see some family, see my parents, see a great grandparent actually. And then my youngest's birthday is this weekend on the holiday too. So her birthday's actually July 4th, so we have family around again.
Oh man, it's gonna be hectic for you. How old is your youngest turning?
My youngest is turning 2. My oldest is 4.
Okay, and how is the 2-year-old stage? So I have a 4 month old. I'm just curious. I hear a lot about that 2-year-old stage. I've also
So
heard that it's 3, and I've also heard that it's 4. So I'm like, basically, what I hear is that everything is bad.
no, it's like as a parent, it's wild because you're just seeing a different person like every like 4 months. Like once they really start walking and really start, just showing their being able to act on their personality and things like that. And like you just watch them turn into different people, like literally week by week. So and then the more they can say, the more they can express, and they start trying you because they want to know what power words have. They start to notice that they have power, so they start to see what they can say, and it's wild. But my 2-year old is definitely in her, if you want to call it terrible twos, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But she's also the second child, so the second child is already like nutso. Like, like for some reason they're out of their minds. So she's different than my oldest for sure. Like they're two different ends of the spectrum.
That's wild. Yeah, that's kind of what I hear. I mean, it just there's a couple that we hang out with here. They have a she just turned 3 actually, but they came over and it was just the dad and her, and we have this little archway in between. There's couches on each side, and he said, Roker or Ryan or wow, I just combined both their names. Rowan, don't go over that little edge. And she looks at him, smiles, and then just jumps over it. And he just
Exactly.
like, I can't control this. I don't know how to control her.
You can't. That's exactly what it is. It's that story is exactly what you get every day.
Cool. I can't wait for that. Should be
It's
great.
it's fun though. It's
Yeah.
definitely fun.
I feel like it's just like you're kind of just like surviving at every stage of parenting, and then all of a sudden they're 18 and they're gone.
Yeah, that's what's
um,
crazy.
well, wild times. Well, obviously, kind of like parenting. It's an 18-year job. You have actually been in the NBA for nearly that long as well. That was a nice transition on my part. I want to talk a little bit about the NBA career that you've had, and also talk a little bit about Sideline Cancer as well. But let's kick it off at the very beginning. And doing some research, it sounds like you chose to go pro after being drafted early in the second round. Before that, you had committed to Texas, and you had said, if I go in the first round, I'm going pro. If I don't go in the first round, I'm going to Texas. Can you walk me through that decision making process? And also, I'm curious, how would your decision making process potentially change today when you have the G League program and you also have overseas players and you also have NIL? Kind of a loaded
So
question.
yeah, I was trying to make sure I try to hit everything without going too far. So first of all, the side note going in the draft, it was more so I had really good workouts in the draft workout process. I basically had 3 teams tell me they were going to draft me. They all had first round picks. Then draft day comes, as we know, trades happen. So bunch of trades happen. So like I knew Utah was going to pick me, and they had the 27th pick and they had the 6th pick. Somebody was going to pick Darren Williams. So they traded 6 and 27 to get 3. So now that pick's gone. And the other 2 teams, they told me it was between one, like me and someone else. But I knew the Utah was really, really solid. So I ended up getting picked 34th by the Jazz, and they guaranteed me though. So I basically got the same deal I would have got as a first rounder. And all I wanted was the guarantee so I can make sure I had a chance to work and show that I was supposed to be there. I didn't want it to be, you know, a training camp deal. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of times there's a pecking order still. And like
Yep.
it's harder to beat out guys when you're not gonna have as much time to be around and there's not gonna be as much time to put into you. I wanted to make sure I got a fair shot at it, knowing that I was going to a coach that did not like young players already.
Yeah.
Coach Sloan, that was just, and I'm the youngest person in the history of the franchise. So I'm like really on the uphill battle here. But he was
You got
great.
to sell yourself to succeed a little bit there.
Yeah, but he was great though. We ended up having a really good relationship, which is funny, and because he just he was on me so much when I first got there. Like he's just everything. Like, and he made the quote in the paper. I remember when I was like in my second year, he said, I can't put a jock strap on one day and a diaper the next. Like, and I was like, man, it's a wild statement.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, do I want to include that in here? And I was like, I'm not gonna ask that. Because I was like, whatever, it's not a huge deal. But now that you bring it up, I'm glad you find it kind of funny now. Do you feel like after that time with him, do you feel like you realize kind of how he was pushing you and how it ultimately kind of worked? It's one of those things like when you're in the moment, you're like, what is going on? Why is he constantly doing this? Then you get out of it, you're like, oh, I see it. Or was it kind of one of those realizations of like, nope, I don't see it. That was dumb. I don't know why I was getting treated like that.
Yeah. So obviously in the beginning, I don't, because I'm a kid. I'm a kid that's been the best basketball player on the court on pretty much every court he stepped on his whole life, you know? And then you go somewhere and you go to play basketball, which is what you know, and they basically tell you that you're not good enough. Like and I obviously didn't go into the draft thinking I was going to go be an all-star my first year right away. I knew I had to work on some things, but I definitely thought I was good enough to play. And I also thought I could learn faster if I got more chances to play. I thought I could grow faster. I knew who I was going to be, what I wanted to be in, that I was going to be a player in the league. I just wanted to get to it. And it was hard in the beginning because of that. Especially watching, you watch guys that we know how to, like, I'm not trying to like make it like point nobody else and blast nobody, but there's guys that don't work as hard. You feel like you should get chances to play, that don't really take the job serious. They do certain things. They don't treat it the way that I'm looking at it. I'm thinking like I'm putting everything into this, and I watch a guy basically take a night off one night, not play hard at all, and keep his position, and that was hard too in the beginning. But I wish I'd have grasped it differently younger, but I didn't. How could I was so young. But I definitely got it, as we went, and I understood it. But and I carried more of it when I left, I think, than even more so.
Yeah, that's wild to me. I mean, I can't imagine being 18, 19, playing against grown men in the NBA. I was just trying to figure out how to pass like accounting basics in college. And you're like, cool, I'm going to go play against grown men who've been doing this for the last, 30 years. I also wanted to quickly call back to a point. You had mentioned that the Utah Jazz traded up their 6th and 27th pick. So it sounds like the plan was to pick you at 27. Had they been able to keep those 2 picks, that makes sense.
It was gonna be Darren and me no matter what.
Yeah,
that we were gonna be the picks, but obviously Darren was a little bit more important. So which is understandable.
Yeah, Darren had a very nice career as well. So if you had the choice now, and you have the G League program, which you are very familiar with because you helped as kind of the veteran presence on the G League Ignite. You have NIL, and you already have the opportunity to make $1 million playing overseas, or you'd go to the NBA. Would you do the same thing today?
The way it is right now, like if I was a kid right now, I would go to school. Like, not even a question. I would go to school. I don't care what, especially with the NIL now. Like, before that, maybe we like obviously it's different, but with the NIL the way it is now, I would go to school because we talking everything now. We talking about building your brand. We talking about just high level basketball, the way it's looked at in college, and that's no offense to the G League, but the route still like I don't think unless you're Zion, obviously, and you're the biggest phenomenon, you have this. Like it's gonna be.
You have a brand when you're 10.
Yeah, but if you're a kid that's just a really good player in your class, you're top whatever, and you definitely have a chance. There's a route you can see to get you to the league. I'm with the NIL now. I'm picking school because I'm gonna be on national TV because I'm going to a power school. I'm going to one of the biggest schools in the country. I'm gonna be on national TV 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week. I'm gonna be able to build my brand because of that. So my social media is going to grow because of that fan base and the TV fan base that I'm just going to get from people that just love to watch basketball. And just the one thing I know I miss about not going to school is the camaraderie that's built, the relationships that are built in that school that carry on for a lifetime. Like I was in locker rooms. I don't have that. Like, no, all these guys, like all these college, the bets on their homes, on their schools when they play each other, the just guys from their school or rivalry. I have stories from like my district games in high school. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have like, I wasn't able to relate on that. Like, I wasn't able to grasp that part of the camaraderie on the new team, on the older team, because I didn't have it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if you had to pick, what would have been your brand? Like, if you're like, if I could partner with, and let's not go with like a shoe company, like a Nike, if you could pick like a brand outside of athletic apparel and shoe companies, what would it have been?
I don't know. Like, I know. So one thing about when I was younger, I very much thought like I did now. Like, I always thought I wanted to be a creative. Like, I wanted to create. Like, I was going to go to school for architecture. That's what I was going to study in school. I was always into any type of creating, music, drawing, coloring, painting, anything that I could express outside of basketball. Like, and I think that was just part of me being a kid, starting to see that everybody only talked to me because of basketball. You know, when you're young and you're like, you're the route that I'm on, that's all there is to talk about. So I think I always tried to find ways to be able to express myself without it too, because I didn't want it to take over me. It was already taking over everything else. So I didn't want to just only that be the only thing I had going for myself when I sit down and talk to somebody. I didn't want that to be the conversation all the time. So, but I was always into history. So like, obviously architecture drew my interest because of the buildings and there's so much history. That's how we talk about a lot of history. It usually comes with ruins and buildings and old different ways they built things. They still don't know how they built the pyramids, whatever, all the things you can talk about. Like, that was interesting to me. So I would be looking somewhere in an art type space. I think I would try to put myself in position to make relationships with the things I had interest in. So if I could talk to an architecture firm, if I could talk to interior designers, if I could talk to music and producers and labels and do these things with things like that, that's what I would want to do.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I mean, that's awesome. I think if I remember correctly, when I was doing some research, you've actually put out was it an album recently or
a couple years ago? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How did that?
It too. Yeah.
How did that go for you?
That was so I've done music. Like, I sang in choir growing up, played the piano, started writing, making music. I've been doing it my whole career. I just wasn't like putting it out and doing all this stuff. And then when the pandemic came and I had my minor injuries I was healing up from, I had time. So I wanted to put it somewhere. I wanted to put that. I don't sit still well. So all that time I was putting in the basketball and all that working out and all the training, there was so much of it I couldn't do because I was in a boot at one time and then I was in a cast at one time that I had to stay on because I had pins. I couldn't sweat because the pins would get infected.
Oh man.
So like I had time.
That would have been tough.
It was very. So I leaned into the things that I really, really love to do also and tried to like just express myself to those as much as I can. And the pandemic and I was becoming a new dad. I had the injury. I had so many things I wanted to say, so I had to put it somewhere.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. You don't I've done this. I've talked to a lot of different players before, and I don't typically hear so much involvement in like creative arts in that regard. And I think that's really cool. So you've played on several teams. You played 800 NBA games, over 800 NBA games. You started over 300. You played for the Jazz, the Cavs, the Wizards, Celtics, Raptors, and Pacers. Is there any team I'm missing from that, or is that?
So I have to go in orders. Utah, Cleveland, Indy. Oh, Memphis. I did Memphis. I got traded. I did second half of the season in Memphis. That's what we're missing.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I also threw you off because I put when I put the thing in my notes, it was Jazz, Cavs, Wizards, Celtics, Raptors, and I was like, I feel like I missed one, and then I saw the Pacers, and I put that at the bottom, and so I think that probably threw you off too. Yeah. What was your favorite stint? Obviously, you talked a little bit about playing for the Jazz, but what was your favorite stint in the NBA?
That's tough, man. That's because it's like, so I enjoy to play basketball so much. So like I took, even in the times, like in the 2 years in Cleveland, we didn't win a lot. We were in a transitional phase, but I took so much from that. Like there's so many good memories from it. I don't look at it as being like down, you know? Mm-hmm. But Indiana, I would probably say the Pacers, it felt the most like home, like when I was in Indiana, like just the atmosphere. So my wife's got family there, so we had a family backing there all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because her mom grew up there, so there was always that feeling of, you know, having people that were not like nothing against a fan, not just fans, like actual people that were in your corner there, like that wouldn't sway if you missed 6 shots or like and that does a lot for you though, because, you know, sometimes you're in a city and, you know, it's the treatment is as it goes. Like, you're playing well these last 3 games, everybody's cool. And you then play good the next 3 and everybody's not. Like, that's hard sometimes to only have that around you.
Yeah. And I think one thing people don't realize too about Indianapolis is that it's actually a pretty small city. It's not, I mean, it's a pretty small city, all things considered, compared to everywhere else in the NBA in terms of markets. So I think you kind of get a bit more homey of a feeling too there as well, which is pretty cool. What is something out of the NBA that, you know, casual fans don't realize or wouldn't know?
Hmm.
And that's a really tough one. I feel like there's probably 5,000 things. But I feel like
I think that's
making if someone's like
it.
making assumptions on like the NBA and like people are making you know, say like people are taking the night off or whatever it might be, what is like one thing where like, I wish fans knew this or understood this?
I think it's just the biggest thing. I think even some players that are coming up, that is just understanding, this sounds cliche, but like the real amount of work that's done, like in the short amount of time too, with all the traveling on and things. So think about like an East Coast team on a West Coast swing. So you're dealing with the travel after already playing was going to lead to some information, whatever, the sitting, whatever, getting there, getting whatever treatments you got to be able to do, dealing with the time change, figuring out a way to get some extra work in to make sure you stay crisp in that time. We're talking like you might be 45 games in. And I'm not trying to make it sound like a pity party. Like, of course, like we signed up for this, but I think there's a disconnect sometimes to really understand that what we are doing is not normal on any fronts on a human body. Like, it's not. And we're talking, this is year round. So like we're training. Also, you're working year round to be able to make sure you can stay in the league. And I think the money is what makes the disconnect, obviously. Like, like we're looking at what's coming up on Twitter right now and Instagram right now. Like,
oh my gosh, NBA free agency is blowing up.
It's wild. And it's obviously it's great. Like, you're happy guys get to make the money they make and make the living they get off of playing the game. But I think we live in a time and in a place where money is such, like, how everything is pretty much judged. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people feel like there's a big part of our world that thinks that would solve all of their problems. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's where the disconnect, that's why you have that rift you see with players on social media or people saying, well, he should be doing this. He gets paid this. Like, that's always the answer. And that's not to make light of any situations, but there's still very much a lot going on besides what's going on. After
human.
And if I decided to give you half my deal, I gave you all my money, you would find out very fast that a lot of those problems that are not going away.
Yeah.
Like, there's some stress going away for sure, because you don't have to worry about some certain things, but there's a big chunk of life that's still sitting right in front of you.
I feel like people don't realize, like, it almost creates like another avenue of problems too, probably. I know I was listening to, have you ever heard of Mike Stud, or just goes by Mike now? He did an interview with on the You Never Know podcast with Baker Mayfield, and Baker made a comment. Obviously, Baker is very polarizing. We all understand that, but made a comment about, you know, I would just love for these people to spend a day in my life, or maybe I go up to your office, your cubicle, and just boo you all day and see how you react. And there was a lot more to it as well. And he got taken wildly out of context, as Baker does a decent amount of the time. But people were up in arms about, well, he makes $20 million. He's fine. When you're like, the guy's a human too. Like, he has feelings and thoughts.
Like, think about all the times you've, like, say you went to a fast food restaurant and they forgot something in the bag. Could you
I'm a bad
imagine me?
person.
Could you imagine me turning around, parking in the parking lot, going inside, standing in front of that guy and screaming, "You suck! You are the worst! I hope somebody died." You know, all the things that are said.
Yeah.
Off on social media, in stands, the names called, all of this. I'm not saying that trash talk isn't part of the game. There's definitely that's banter. That banter is definitely good for the game, but there's a line. Like, as long as we talk about basketball, I think everything's fine. Like, that's what we're talking about. That's what's being played. That's what you're watching. That's what I'm doing. That makes the most sense, right? Let's talk about that. Like, I have to talk about my grandma. Like, that has nothing to do with nothing.
She's just minding her own business, watching the game. Leave her out of it.
She's doing the same thing you're doing.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see kind of, like you said, that disconnect. And the money does play into that disconnect. But what I find interesting is when people talk about, well, that person's making $30 million. I'm like, well, if you don't like it, don't watch the game, because the reason why they're able to make that much money is because you're supporting, watching, and doing these things. Like, it's all one big cycle. You're the one who's also putting them on this pedestal too. So it's very interesting. I mean, it's wild, but I appreciate you sharing that. It's very crazy.
And it's really funny too, is that there's a lot of people that talk about it like they could do it. That's the other thing. That's the real one. That's like, I think sometimes, like, because they only see a certain percentage of what we're doing, there are some pretty athletic people in the world that, you know, are probably borderline, because there's like, the gaps get smaller and smaller as you get higher, and then there's this big gap, and they don't understand that big gap. And I get that, but it's not that simple. Like,
you mentioned too, like the amount of money people make. Like, LeBron James spends like $1 million every year on just recovery. That's why he's able to play at 35. People don't have $1 million to spend on recovery all the time. Like, that's just not a normal thing. I wasn't going to ask this question, but now that I just brought LeBron was on my mind at that point. Who is the GOAT?
So my thing with this, there's a lot of answers, because, like, we never say Bill Russell's name, and we can say Bill Russell's name. Like, obviously the question is LeBron or Jordan.
I think Kobe maybe should be in there. So you're saying no Kobe at all?
I'm not saying not at all, but like, in my mind, like, that's why I go Michael, LeBron.
That's fair.
Like, right away. And that's not that Kobe's not. If we have had to name 5, I'm naming Kobe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I think the one thing that always stands out to me is Michael Jordan changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and I know we're talking about basketball, and there's no shortage on that part too, but like, in my mind as a kid, he changed everything. And that's why it's hard to not give it to him. And it could be just bias on the fact that, like, obviously there's some things, and that's what everybody lists is bias anyway. That's what everybody's list is. But for me, that's the thing that really won't let me, because not only was he great, obviously, for me to say this, but like, he changed. Like, he was great enough to put the league on a platform that changed everything.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like go ahead.
Oh, no. I didn't mean, I would say he revolutionized basketball, but also like the shoe industry, NBA. I mean, and also I think like the era, right? I mean, you and I are roughly close to the same age. I think I'm like a year or two below you, but we grew up watching Michael Jordan as 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds when he was in those final 3 amazing years of the Bulls. I mean, that stuff's just wild.
And he was everywhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't LeBron and Steph and KD and Kyrie's name, and it was Michael Jordan's name. Like, it was Michael Jordan, everything. And that's not, so I'm not saying that to make a shot at those guys. I'm saying that at that time, that's just what it was. Because those guys are equally great in their own right. And there's a reason why their names are everywhere too. Like this. We also have more media outlets, but it's just wild. Now, LeBron, I think when we sit down and we really have like a straight up basketball conversation, and we pull out numbers and we pull out, like, he's gonna win like almost by default, because you're gonna look up every category and his name's gonna be
right number one.
Yeah, like, so it's hard. Like,
it's really interesting.
And there's the eye test. We got to tell, you know, like, that's a big part of people. Like, just the how much is their game just drawing you in, like the style of their game, the way they play, the things they do, like it's the way Steph. Yes, So that's a part of it. So like some people, if you compare Michael Jordan to LeBron, people will look at Mike just because of the different type of flair. Like they said they thought he could fly. Like they said he looked like he was flying. Like that in itself lets you know what people thought of him. Like
Yeah. It's crazy to me. The reason why I thought about that question, so I listened to Bustin' with the Boys with JJ Redick, and they asked him that question too. And I was walking, I was like, he didn't even think about Kobe. It was literally Jordan and LeBron, which I thought was really interesting. To not, Kobe's obviously in that tier, close to that tier, but I thought that was really interesting. So, were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, I think I'm too close to Kobe. Like,
oh, that's
I'm
yeah.
Close to. I'm like, I was in it, saw it. It's right. It's still very much right there.
Yeah.
Like LeBron's argument is different because we talked about like the stats and everything. He's gonna be number one, so it's hard not to already talk about him that way.
Yep.
And like obviously he's like, from the media standpoint, we talked about he's the Michael Jordan of our time. His name is on everything. He's everywhere. He's you know what I mean? So, but I think just with Kobe, it's hard to like fully digest it the same as I've been able to digest Michael Jordan's career.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, and you grew up, you were playing against him. You were in the league when Kobe was there. So
I played against 8 and 24.
Oh, it's like you saw both Kobe's.
Yeah.
So, who was just a great segue into this. Who was the toughest player you ever had to guard?
I mean, obviously Kobe's on that list. Kobe obviously was hard to guard, but at the same time, even the times you felt like you played good defense, he just made shots. Like it was not you. You weren't ever the reason why he missed shots. It felt like it was him. Like he just slipped or something that time.
Like, cool, I was right there, but it wasn't me. It was just him screwing up.
Obviously LeBron, like size wise, like he's a locomotive, and like there's just a lot of Kevin Durant's extremely hard because you're talking 7 foot with a handle, and then you just talk about all the guys that just run. So like I've guarded Rip Hamilton. Rip Hamilton was in the league. I guarded I've had to guard Stephen Clay before. Like those guys that are just active and the way that they play, those guys are probably the hardest because there's no help side. There's no check-in to see where the ball is at. There's none of that. Like, and the second you do that, which you've been taught to do your whole life, like I know it's there's a scout report, you're supposed to be locked in, but your natural instincts when you're away from the ball is going to be to check and see what's going on. And the second you check, there's 2 screens. And they're gone, and it's over after that.
That's tough. So then I was going to ask you, who do you hate to see guarding you? But I actually have a different question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Is James Harden as bad on defense as he looks on TV?
There's definitely some plays where you're like, yeah, but we can look up a lot of guys and find plays like that. I think it's just being pointed out so much that people are looking for those plays.
All right.
Because if he was as bad as we say, he couldn't be on the floor. Like, you know what I mean? If he was that bad, he couldn't be on the floor as much as he is. I think the last year or so, it's definitely been tough for him, though. He's been injured a lot. So it's definitely, yeah. So if we're looking at it now, we could definitely pick on him. But I don't think he was ever as bad as we thought. Obviously, when you look at the best player, you're going to look for something. Like, you're always going to look for.
Yeah.
And that would definitely be his weak link if that's what we were going to pick. Like,
yeah. I feel like he had a lot of very low lows when it comes to defense. And you look at that and you're like, wow, you talk about those times where like someone's like, the people that on the couch say, I can do that. I think there's legitimate moments where you watch him play defense and you're like, you could have just stood in front of them like a tree and maybe played better defense at times. So I just thought that was interesting. So this is your first TBT. What are you most excited about with TBT? And how closely have you watched it in the past?
So I won't lie. Like, I've been watching it forever. Like I've always caught, pieces of it. I never sat and like kept up with. Last year was the most that I was kind of tied into, and that was more because of Marcus, obviously. Mm-hmm. What I obviously, I've always liked the atmosphere of it, though, the feel of it, and then the way they're doing the
Elam ending.
Yeah.
Yep.
That adds another element to the game. That's a fun part of the game, but it's also a chance to, like, you don't get the atmosphere that you'll be able to get in this tournament. Like we have in the bracket, we win the first game, Xavier wins their first game. We're going to play a college basketball game.
Yeah.
In the middle of the summer on TV. You know what I mean? Like to be able to get that is crazy. Like I'm excited about that.
It's gonna be pretty electric. I mean, so I went down to the Iowa United when they were a team a couple of years ago. They played in Wichita, and I've never experienced a college basketball environment like that. The whole it seemed like the whole state of Kansas showed up for that game to cheer on Wichita State. It was just absolutely electric and wild. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's going to be a ton of fun if you guys get to play the Zips. So we talked a little bit about this pre-show, but why Sideline Cancer?
I mean, I won't lie. The biggest reason was there's two guys that I know that are playing and been in my ear. Marcus has been in my ear about it. I mean, we were up and down about it. He kept asking me. He was one time he was like, "I'm gonna give you some more time. I'm gonna tell him to just save a slot a little bit longer until you give me a definitive answer." But you know, we've been working out together, and he, for a guy to put some trust in you and wants you to come play with him, I thought that was fun. Like to be able to just go play for love of the game and play with some guys you know. And then also like we talking about after doing my research, knowing the things that the organization does, like in so many ways and places. I think that's just obviously in the name, you know, wanting to be a part, being able to be a part of something like that too is always great because you want to, you know, surround yourself and align yourself with things you feel like do good things.
Yeah, kind of the advocacy, the impact that you have that's bigger than basketball, I think is really cool about Sideline Cancer. So you know Marcus, you know Tony. Outside of Marcus and Tony, who are you most excited to play with on the Sideline Cancer team?
Shannon Bogues too, actually. I know Shannon. You know Bogues
Shannon?
Too. I played against Shannon in the G League last year.
Oh yeah. Shannon's hilarious. I enjoyed chatting with him. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, and then obviously he's been down in Texas. We've been down in San Antonio. We played in some runs and stuff like that too. But I think I'm still getting to know the guys. I'm doing my YouTube research as much as I can because I haven't been able to get with guys. But I'm excited to. The one thing I am excited is to be with guys that have been there before, like, and guys that are returners to this team, been on the team for a few. I think that's cool to be able to step into and learn and understand, you know, what it means to them and to get that feel from them too, because I think they definitely have some real ties to this team and this tournament, and it's a fun thing to be a part of.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm really excited to see you play. You were just recently listed as one of the top 15 players going into the tournament, which is really exciting. On that list as well was Marcus and another teammate, Mike Dom. So really excited to see you all play in the tournament. We're going to wrap it up with a few quick, easy questions for you. What is your favorite superhero?
Superman.
Superman? All right.
That was terrible, but that was terrible. No, I just didn't know what to pick, so I picked. I'm a big DC Marvel. Like I'm deep into it. Like, so that's a hard question for me because like I sit around and watch the TV shows and read the comics and do this stuff in my free time too. So like that's a loaded thing because one day it could be Spider-Man, one day it could be, I'm talking with my nephew yesterday, it could be Black Panther, like, because that's one of the things that me and him kind of get the chance to make a connection with.
I love that. So it's just more of the fact that you watch so much superhero stuff and you appreciate it so much that you're like, I can't pick. All right, I can respect that as an answer. I can definitely take that. The next question is, what is your favorite pump up song? What is the song you're listening to before a big game?
I don't know. What I would do was I would make playlists based off the city that I was in.
Ooh,
so where we would travel. So like when we were playing, like if we were going to Chicago, it'd be Kanye, Common, Lupe, like, you know what I mean? I go through the guys that I knew, and then and that was a way I could help myself find new music too, because some cities I didn't know artists from there. So I'd have to literally get on and go look it up. And then I'd throw a couple of songs. So like there's a song that Ace Hood has called Undefeated. But that's one of the songs that kind of stays a staple just because of the beat and the sound and the message in it. But most of the time, that's what I would do when I was in the league.
That's really cool. I think you could almost do like a CJ's Spotify playlist of like the different city rappers. I think would be really cool.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. What is your favorite thing to do outside of basketball?
be with my kids, my family. My girls are growing, so like we're really in the trenches with that. They're 2 and 4, so that's like them. We have a blast. They're so funny because everything is new and refreshing, and it's just funny to hear them. They're learning. They're just learning.
Yeah, a lot of fun development. My kiddo laughed for the first time a week ago, and I was just like on cloud nine. Like that was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, wow, that's really not like overly impressive when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. But when you go from being a sack of potatoes to all of a sudden showing emotion, like it's pretty sweet.
I remember when my first daughter's first lab, we got it on video actually, and we were in Indiana. I was playing for the Raptors.
Awesome.
They came to Indiana so she could meet her great grandma when she was like a few months old, and we were in a hotel room, and she belly laughed, and I remember the side of my head hurt because I smiled so hard for so long.
Yeah, it's seriously like it's like something you'll never forget. It's incredible. What is your favorite food item?
Probably a burger. I'm a burger. I love a good turkey burger, bison burger, anything. We grill a lot. Obviously, being in Texas, so like we make a lot of stuff on the grill.
My man, I'm a big burger guy. And then final question: do you like pineapple on your pizza?
Pineapple does not go on pizza. Pineapple.
I agree.
Pineapple is not a warm thing. It should not be. It doesn't go on warm food.
I completely agree. You'll have to take that argument up with several of your teammates who have bad opinions on pineapple on pizza. CJ, I've had a blast chatting with you, man. I took you a lot over time than what I told you I was going to do, so I really appreciate it. Any last words to the Sideline Cancer family before we close this out?
Man, I can't wait to meet you guys, whoever gets to come to the game, and it got people supporting from afar. Thank you. I'm excited, and everything I got, you get.
I love it. And follow CJ on Instagram at Masfresco, MASFRESCO. And also make sure to, if you have the ability to, if you have the means to support Sideline Cancer, text #ICAN to 44321 and make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sideline Cancer TBT. That'll do it. We'll be back next week with another player preview series. We have Shannon on for our final player preview series next week. And appreciate all the support. Thank you all so much, Sideline Cancer family.